From the moment I was old enough to understand what the word hero meant, my older brother, Ethan, was mine. He wasn't just a sibling to me, he was everything I wanted to be, everything I admired, and everything that made me feel safe in a world that often felt too big for a kid like me. Ethan was 4 years older than me, and that age gap felt like a lifetime when I was a little girl. He was the popular one in school, the one who made friends effortlessly, the one teachers loved, and the one who seemed to know exactly what to say to make everyone laugh. And then there was me, his shy, awkward little sister, trailing behind him like a shadow, hoping that just being near him would make some of that magic rub off on me. We grew up in a small suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and where kids played outside until the streetlights flickered on. Our parents worked hard. Mom was a nurse pulling long shifts at the hospital, and Dad was a truck driver who sometimes went days without coming home. So most of the time, it was just the two of us, Ethan and me, holding down the fort together. And he made it fun. He turned the most ordinary afternoons into adventures. When the house felt too quiet, he'd grab a blanket, throw it over two chairs, and declare it our secret fort. When dinner was just reheated leftovers, he'd make it special by turning off the lights and pretending it was a fancy restaurant, calling himself Chef Ethan in the worst French accent you could imagine. He protected me, too, like the time in 4th grade when a group of kids teased me for wearing hand-me-down clothes. Ethan, who was already in middle school, found out and showed up at recess the next day. I remember the way he walked across that playground like he owned it, staring those kids down until they scattered like mice. That day, I felt untouchable. Because I had him. But it wasn't just about him protecting me from the world. It was about the way he made me believe I mattered. He listened when no one else did. When I cried because I didn't make the school choir, he sat on my bed, handed me a tissue, and said, "You don't need their stage, Lily. You're already the star of mine." That was Ethan, always saying things that made me feel bigger than I was. And because of that, I trusted him completely. There wasn't a single part of my heart he didn't know. He knew about my dreams of being an artist, even when everyone else thought it was silly. He knew about my crush on Jason Miller in 8th grade, and he didn't laugh. Well, not much anyway. He even helped me pick out my first homecoming dress, saying, "If any guy doesn't treat you like a queen in this, I'm knocking on his door." That's why the night everything started to unravel didn't make sense at first. I couldn't imagine Ethan doing anything wrong. Not him. Not the boy who once stayed up all night helping me build a science project because I forgot about it until the last minute. Not the brother who sat in the waiting room with me after I broke my arm falling off my bike. But looking back now, there were signs. Little cracks in the perfect image I had of him, things I brushed off because I didn't want to believe they meant anything. Like how he started locking his bedroom door when he never used to. Or how he'd snap at me for borrowing his phone charger, which seemed so small, so unlike him. And then there were the nights he wouldn't come home. He'd tell Mom he was at a friend's house studying, but I'd see the way his hands shook when he poured himself a glass of water the next morning, the way he avoided looking at us like he was hiding behind some invisible wall. I told myself it was just stress. He was in his senior year of high school trying to get into college. Everyone changes a little under pressure, right? That's what I believed, because believing anything else felt impossible. But that illusion shattered one evening in a way I'll never forget. It was the night I realized my hero wasn't who I thought he was. The night that set everything in motion. It started with a phone call. I was in my room sketching when I heard Mom's voice in the hallway, low and tense, like she didn't want me to hear. But the walls in our house were thin, and when she said his name, Ethan, I froze. There was a tone in her voice I'd never heard before, something sharp and heavy. A few seconds later, her footsteps hurried down the hall, and the front door slammed. I peeked out my window just in time to see her car speed off. And then my phone buzzed. It was a text. From an unknown number. "You think your brother's perfect? You have no idea who he really is." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. At first, I thought it was a prank, but deep down, something told me this wasn't just a joke. Something told me my world was about to change, and not in the way I ever wanted it to. I stared at that text like it was a ticking bomb. My brain couldn't process it. You think your brother's perfect? You have no idea who he really is. Who would send me something like that? My first thought was some stupid prank from a classmate. Maybe someone who noticed how much I adored Ethan. Everyone knew how I talked about him, how I bragged about him being the smartest, funniest, most reliable guy I knew. Maybe someone wanted to mess with me. But the words. It didn't feel like a joke. There was something too sharp, too personal about them. And what made my stomach twist even more was that the timing wasn't random. Mom had just left in a hurry after a tense phone call about Ethan. My gut told me the two things were connected. My fingers hovered over the screen, unsure if I should reply. My heart said ignore it. Pretend it never happened. But my curiosity, the part of me that needed to protect Ethan the way he always protected me, took over. Who is this? What are you talking about? I typed back, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. Seconds felt like hours before the reply came. Ask him about last night. See what he tells you. I blinked at the screen, reading the message over and over. Last night? What was last night? Ethan had told us he was sleeping over at Mark's house to work on a school project. Nothing unusual. He did that a lot lately. Before I could type another question, 3 dots appeared. And then disappeared. Whoever it was had gone silent. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, pulse racing. I wanted to march into Ethan's room and demand answers, but he wasn't home. His car wasn't in the driveway, and Mom had driven off without telling me where she was going. I felt trapped in this bubble of dread, with no one to turn to and no way to make sense of any of it. Finally, I did what any desperate little sister would do. I texted Ethan. Hey, where are you? Minutes passed. No response. Ethan, you okay? Nothing. By the time Mom came home an hour later, my nerves were shot. I heard the front door open and rushed to the hallway. She looked different, pale, shaken, like she'd seen a ghost. Mom? What's going on? Where's Ethan? She startled like she didn't expect me there. Her eyes started away, and for a split second, I saw something in them, fear. He's fine, she said quickly, too quickly. He's just staying with a friend tonight. Don't worry about it. Don't worry? You slammed the door and sped off like the house was on fire. And now you're telling me not to worry. My voice cracked as I stepped closer. Mom, what happened? Please, just tell me. But she wouldn't look at me. She just brushed past and disappeared into her room, leaving me standing there with a million questions and no answers. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me sit up, thinking maybe Ethan had come home. Every vibration of my phone sent my heart racing, but it was never him. Only silence. And the longer it stretched, the heavier that text felt in my mind, like poison spreading through everything I thought I knew. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. Ethan was back. I practically flew out of bed and ran downstairs. He was sitting at the table, eating cereal like nothing happened. Like he hadn't disappeared for an entire day and left me drowning in panic. Mom stood at the sink, her back to us, shoulders tense. Where were you? The words came out harsher than I intended. Ethan looked up, spoon halfway to his mouth. His eyes flickered just for a second, but I saw it. Guilt. Relax, Lil, he said with a shrug. I told you. I was at Mark's. No, you didn't. I texted you like 100 times. You didn't answer. My phone died, he said casually, but his voice had that edge, that defensive note I wasn't used to hearing from him. I stared at him, searching for the boy I knew, the one who never lied to me. But something about his face, the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes, it didn't fit. What's going on, Ethan? My voice cracked. Why is Mom acting weird? Why did she leave last night looking like someone died? Nothing happened, he snapped, louder this time. God, can you stop interrogating me? You're being annoying. The word hit me like a slap. Annoying. He'd never talked to me like that before. Ever. My throat tightened as I backed away, blinking hard to keep the tears from spilling. Fine, I whispered. Whatever. I turned and walked back upstairs, but inside, something shattered. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like Ethan was my safe place. I felt like there was a wall between us, thick, cold, and covered in secrets I wasn't supposed to know. And that's when I made a decision I never thought I'd make. If he wasn't going to tell me the truth, I was going to find it myself. That night, when everyone was asleep, I crept out of my room and tiptoed into Ethan's. The air smelled like his cologne, mixed with something faint and sour that made my stomach turn. I moved quietly, my heart pounding so hard I was sure it would wake him up if he were there. But he wasn't. His bed was empty again. I started small, checking his desk drawers. Just old notebooks and random junk. Then I spotted his backpack leaning against the wall. My hands shook as I unzipped it, half hoping I wouldn't find anything, half dreading what I might. Inside, I found crumpled papers, a hoodie, and at the very bottom, a small black notebook with a broken elastic band. My breath caught as I pulled it out and opened to the first page. The handwriting was Ethan's. But the words? They didn't sound like him at all. I can't keep this up much longer. They're going to find out. I'm already in too deep. God, what have I done? I flipped to another page, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the notebook. If Lily ever knew the truth, she'd hate me. Maybe that would be easier. Maybe that's what I deserve. The room spun around me. I sank onto the edge of his bed, clutching that notebook like it was a lifeline. My brother, the person I trusted most in this world, was hiding something so big, so dark, that he thought I'd hate him if I knew. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of the answer. I sat on Ethan's bed, my fingers gripping that notebook so tightly my knuckles turned white. My eyes kept scanning the pages, over and over, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying if I stared long enough. But they didn't. They stayed the same. I can't keep this up much longer. They're going to find out. I'm already in too deep. God, what have I done? Each sentence felt like a punch to the chest. And then there was that line that tore me apart inside. If Lily ever knew the truth, she'd hate me. Me. He wrote that about me. My big brother, my hero, thought that whatever he had done was so unforgivable that it would destroy the one thing I thought nothing could touch us. My mind spun in circles, trying to piece together clues. Was it something illegal? Something violent? No. No. Ethan wasn't like that. He was the guy who gave stray dogs water in the summer. The guy who stayed up late helping me study even when he had his own exams. He wasn't bad. He couldn't be. Could he? I flipped through more pages, desperate for answers. Most of it was messy, like he'd written it in a rush, his thoughts spilling out in panic. But then, on a page near the middle, I found something that made my stomach drop. A name. Tyler. I froze. Tyler was Ethan's best friend. They'd been inseparable since middle school. What did Tyler have to do with this? The next line made my throat tighten. He said it would just be once. Just to help out. I didn't think it would turn into this. Turn into what? My brain was screaming for clarity, but every answer seemed further away the more I read. And then, before I could flip another page, I heard it, the soft creak of a floorboard in the hallway. I jumped, shoving the notebook back into the backpack, zipping it up so fast the teeth snagged for a second. My heart hammered as I scrambled to my feet, darting toward the door just as it opened. And there he was. Ethan. His face was pale, his hair messy like he'd been outside in the wind. For a moment, neither of us moved. The silence between us was deafening. His eyes dropped to the backpack, then back to me, and something in them changed, like a switch flipping. What are you doing in here? His voice was low, but sharp enough to cut through me. I was just. My throat felt like sandpaper. You weren't home, and I wanted to make sure. Don't lie to me, Lily. His tone was cold now. Hard. I'd never heard him sound like that. Not to me. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding against my ribs. Ethan, what's going on? Please. Just tell me the truth. He stared at me for a long time, his jaw tight, his eyes darting like he was calculating something. Then he stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. You went through my stuff. It wasn't a question. I had to. The words burst out before I could stop them. You've been acting so weird, and mom is freaking out. And then I got this text saying I don't know who you really are. What text? His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. I froze. Show me. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. He read the messages, his face hardening with each second. When he looked up, there was something dark in his eyes, something I'd never seen before. Who sent this? He demanded. I don't know, I whispered. Ethan, what does it mean? What's happening to you? Please, you're scaring me. He stared at me like he was deciding whether to let me in or shut me out completely. For a second, I thought he'd yell, or storm out, or something. But instead, he sank onto the edge of his bed, his hands covering his face. I didn't want you to find out like this, he muttered, his voice breaking. A cold shiver ran through me. Find out what? When he finally looked at me, his eyes were red. And in that moment, I realized whatever this was, it wasn't just trouble. It was pain. Deep, heavy pain he'd been carrying alone. Lily, he whispered, his voice trembling, I messed up bad. My heart clenched. What did you do? He swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he spoke. Tyler. He got me into something. At first, it was just harmless, you know? Just making some quick cash. But then, it wasn't harmless anymore. I stared at him, my mind spinning. Cash? Ethan? What are you talking about? He hesitated, his jaw tightening like he couldn't force the words out. Selling stuff. To kids at school. The floor seemed to tilt under me. You mean, drugs? My voice cracked on the word. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The shame in his eyes said everything. I stumbled back, my chest aching like someone had punched through it. No, Ethan, you wouldn't. You're not. I didn't want this. His voice cracked, loud and desperate. I swear, Lily, I never wanted this. Tyler said it was easy money, that nobody would get hurt. Mom and Dad are broke, and I thought if I could help, if I could take care of you. Take care of me by ruining your life? Tears blurred my vision as my voice rose. Ethan, do you hear yourself? This isn't you. I know, he shouted, then dropped his face into his hands again. I know. But I can't just stop now. It's not that simple. If I walk away, they'll come after me. After you. The words hit me like ice water. They? Who's they? He didn't answer. His silence was worse than any explanation. That's when the fear really set in, not just fear for him, but fear that whatever this was, it was bigger than both of us. And I knew then that the brother I thought was my hero, the boy I worshipped like he could do no wrong, was standing on the edge of something dark, something that could swallow him whole. And maybe me, too. The silence after his confession was deafening. It pressed against my ears, heavier than the pounding of my heart. My brother, the same guy who taught me how to ride a bike, who protected me from bullies, who once told me I was the best part of his life, was sitting there telling me he was mixed up in drugs. I felt like I was falling and there was nothing to grab onto. Ethan, I whispered, my throat so tight it hurt. We have to tell Mom. His head snapped up, eyes blazing. No, you can't tell her. You can't tell anyone. Are you kidding me? My voice cracked. This isn't just skipping class or lying about where you've been. You're in something dangerous. You said people will come after us. And they will if you open your mouth. He shot back, his voice like steel. Lily, you don't understand. These guys aren't like the kids at school. They're serious. If they think I'm a problem, they won't just talk it out. My stomach twisted. His words didn't sound like a warning. They sounded like a threat hanging over both of our heads. I sank onto the floor, my legs too weak to hold me up. Tears burned my eyes as I stared at him, desperate for some piece of the brother I knew to show through. Why didn't you come to me? Or Mom? Or someone before it got this bad? His jaw clenched, and when he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Because I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed bitterly through the tears. Ethan, you've put us all in danger. You've put yourself in danger. This isn't protecting anyone. He dropped his gaze, his hands gripping his knees so hard his knuckles turned white. I thought I could handle it. I thought, if I just did a few runs, made some quick cash, I could get out before things got messy. But now, he trailed off, his voice breaking. Now they own me, Lil. Every time I try to back out, they remind me what's at stake. They know where we live. They know about you. A shiver ran down my spine so hard I thought I might collapse. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see were the walls closing in around us. The life I thought was safe and normal turning into something dark and dangerous. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and make him promise he'd fix this, that everything would go back to the way it was before. But deep down, I knew it was too late for that. So I did the only thing I could think of. I'm helping you get out, I said, my voice trembling but steady. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. No, absolutely not. You don't have a choice, I shot back. You said if you walk away, they'll come after you. Fine. But what if they think you're not worth the trouble? What if we give them a reason to let you go? And what reason would that be? He asked, his tone sharp like he thought I had no idea what I was saying. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm not just sitting here waiting for some guy to show up at our door. I'm not losing you, Ethan. I don't care what you've done, you're my brother. His expression softened for just a moment, and in his eyes, I saw a flash of the boy I grew up with. The one who promised to always have my back. But then the fear returned, and he shook his head. You don't understand how dangerous this is, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. If they even think you're involved, then we'll be careful, I cut in. We'll figure this out together. Like we always have. Before he could argue, a sound shattered the fragile quiet of the room. A car door slamming outside. We both froze. Then came footsteps on the gravel. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. Ethan jumped to his feet, his face draining of color. He rushed to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek out. I watched his jaw tighten, his hands ball into fists. They're here, he whispered. My stomach dropped. Who? He didn't answer. He just grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the closet. Get in. Now. Ethan. Don't argue with me, Lily. Please. His voice cracked, and that was what made me move. I crawled inside the closet, my heart racing so fast I thought it might give me away. Through the sliver of light between the doors, I saw Ethan grab something from under his bed, a small duffel bag I hadn't noticed before. Then came the knock. Hard. Loud. Ethan. Open up. A voice barked, deep and sharp enough to send chills ripping down my spine. Ethan glanced at the closet, his eyes locking with mine for a split second. There was fear there. But something else too, determination. And then he opened the door. About time, the man on the porch said, stepping inside like he owned the place. He was older, maybe mid-30s, with tattoos creeping up his arms and a look that said he wasn't here to chat. Another guy followed him in, taller, quieter, but his presence was even scarier somehow. I pressed my hand over my mouth, praying they couldn't hear my breathing. You got what we asked for? The first guy demanded. Yeah, Ethan said, his voice steady like he'd practiced it. He set the duffel on the bed and unzipped it just enough for them to peek inside. I couldn't see what was in it, but the way the guy smiled told me it was enough to keep Ethan alive, for now. Good, the man said. You're learning. But don't think this means you're off the hook. Next week, we double it. Ethan stiffened. That wasn't the deal. The guy's smile vanished. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something cold and sharp. The deal is whatever I say it is. Got it? Ethan didn't move. Didn't flinch. But I could see his fist clenching at his sides. Yeah, he muttered. Got it. The man patted his cheek, harder than necessary, before turning toward the door. Smart kid. Don't screw it up. And then, just like that, they were gone. The second the door clicked shut, Ethan locked it and collapsed against it, his chest heaving like he'd just run a marathon. I burst out of the closet, my legs shaking so badly I almost fell. Ethan. My voice broke. What was in the bag? Money, he said, his voice hollow. Everything I had. And it's still not enough. I stared at him, my heart shattering. He looked so tired, so beaten down. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a mistake he could walk away from. This was a trap. One that was tightening around him every second. And unless I did something, it was going to crush him. When the door closed behind those men, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a cage. A ticking time bomb. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator sounded like a countdown to disaster. Ethan sank onto the couch, his hands buried in his hair, his shoulders trembling in a way I'd never seen before. He wasn't the strong, untouchable brother I'd looked up to my entire life. He was broken, and it broke me too. I sat across from him, my legs numb, my voice barely a whisper. How much do you owe them? He didn't look at me. Too much. More than I can make in months. And now. He trailed off, his breath shuddering. Now they doubled it. I wanted to scream, cry, punch something. Anything but sit there drowning in helplessness. There has to be a way out. We can go to the police. No. His head shot up, his eyes blazing with a fear that cut me deeper than any yell ever could. Lily, if you go to the cops, they'll know. These guys. They have people everywhere. They don't just come after you. They come after everyone you care about, mom, dad, you. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I'd be sick. So what, Ethan? You just keep doing this? Until what? Until they own you forever? Until you end up in jail? Or worse? His jaw clenched. His silence was answer enough. And that was when something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let this happen. Not to him. Not to us. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Then I'll fix it. His head jerked toward me. What? I'm not just going to sit here and watch you destroy yourself. I'll figure something out. I don't care what it takes. Lily, no. His voice cracked as he grabbed my arm. You're not getting involved in this. Promise me. Swear to me. I looked into his eyes, those same eyes that had always been full of warmth and safety, and saw nothing but fear now. Fear for me. Fear that this darkness would swallow me whole too. I can't promise that, I whispered. His grip tightened for a second, then loosened as tears filled his eyes. I should have never let it get this far. His voice broke completely. I should have protected you from all of this. And instead, he dragged me into a nightmare neither of us knew how to escape. I sat beside him, wrapping my arms around his shaking frame. You're still my brother, I said softly, even as my heart splintered into pieces. That hasn't changed. It never will. For a long time, we just sat there, clinging to each other like the world outside had turned to fire. I wish that could have been enough, that love could have erased everything. But it couldn't. Love wasn't enough to erase debt, or threats, or men who could shatter lives with a single phone call. And sure enough, the calls started coming. Every day, Ethan's phone would buzz with demands. More money, faster, or else. Each time, I watched him crumble a little more until he was barely holding on. That's when I made the choice that would change everything. One night, after Ethan finally passed out on the couch from exhaustion, I slipped into his room and grabbed the notebook again. Tucked inside the last page was a name I'd missed before, a name I knew. Tyler. The guy who dragged Ethan into this mess. The guy who was still walking around free, while my brother was drowning. I didn't think. I just acted. I found his address online, grabbed my jacket, and left without a word. My hands shook the entire drive, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I wasn't brave. I wasn't strong. I was terrified. But I kept going, because the thought of losing Ethan was worse than anything waiting for me at the end of that road. When I pulled up to Tyler's house, the lights were on. Music thumped faintly from inside. I clenched my fists, marched up the steps, and pounded on the door. He opened it with that smug grin I'd seen 100 times in the halls at school. Well, little Lily. Didn't expect to see you here. I didn't waste time. Leave Ethan alone. My voice shook, but I forced the words out like steel. Tell your friends to back off. Now. He laughed, a low, mocking sound that made my skin crawl. Or what? You gonna run to mommy and daddy? Maybe call the cops? I'm not bluffing, I said, my nails digging into my palms. If you don't stop this, everyone will know. Your teachers, your parents, the cops. I'll make sure you go down for all of it. His smile faltered for just a second, and I knew I'd hit something. But then he stepped closer, his voice dropping. You think they'll believe you over me? Cute. Before I could answer, another voice cut through the tension. Try me. I turned, and there was Ethan, standing at the end of the walkway, his chest heaving, his eyes blazing with something I'd never seen before. I told you to stay out of this, he said, his voice breaking as he reached me. Ethan. No, he shook his head, tears streaming down his face. This ends now. What happened next is a blur. There was shouting. Threats. Tyler getting in Ethan's face, Ethan shoving him back, me screaming for them to stop. And then sirens. I don't know who called them. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe God himself decided to intervene. All I know is that by the time the flashing lights lit up the street, Ethan was on his knees with his hands on his head, tears running down his cheeks as he looked at me like he was sorry for everything. And I'll never forget what he said before they took him away. Don't hate me, Lil. His voice cracked like glass. Please. Don't hate me. I don't. Even now, months later, visiting him in that cold gray room, I can't hate him. Because I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to be the big brother he'd always been, the protector, the hero. But heroes fall. And when they do, the people who love them have to choose whether to turn away or hold on even tighter. I chose to hold on. Even if it broke me.